I'm Sean Haney, and this is RealAg on the Weekend. Let's get real and get connected with the week that was in Canadian agriculture. RealAg on the Weekend starts now.
Good afternoon and welcome here to RealAg on the Weekend on CKOM 650 and CJME 980. I am your host, Lindsay Smith, and we have so much to tackle on today's show. So just quickly, we're going to hear from Corey Jacob with the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture. We're going to talk about herbicide carryover risk. We've got some new maps to dig into. We're also going to hear from Mr. Tom Wolf with Agrometrics and Sprayers 101. We've got a report from Germany. Yes, Agritechnica happened this week, and we've got so much amazing coverage over at RealAgriculture.com, but we're going to bring some of it here to you on the show. We've also got a product spotlight, a paid spot by Genesis Fertilizers, so you can hear about the plant that's planned for Belle Plaine. And at the end, I'm going to wrap it up with some news because we have a lot of announcements that were made this week. We've also got some significant events planned for next week, all about Bill C-234. This is the bill that would exempt grain dryers and barn heating from the carbon tax. So stick around right to the end for that one. But before we get there, let's start right here in Saskatchewan talking about what maps we got this week and what's on the radar. So if you head on over to the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture website, you'll find there the grasshopper maps have been posted. There's a few others. And as you're going to hear in a moment, we've also got, and this is super important, a herbicide carryover risk map that's been put together. And so it actually just came out yesterday. So when I spoke with Corey, you'll hear him mention them. They actually had not yet been made live, but they are now. So if you're interested to see what we're talking about, head on over to the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture website. Also of note on this conversation is we don't talk about it in the interview, but we mentioned it after, and I wanted to bring it up here. There's always that concern with when you take on new land, you don't always get the records. And it's really important, A, to keep good records of every pass on the field, really, but for rented land, as landowners, should you be requiring your renters to be keeping track of crop rotation and products simply for the next person in line, or maybe your own, maybe you start farming it again and you want to know? Or should you, as someone who's renting land, offer to keep these records and let that landowner know? It's a really interesting point and something definitely to mull over. So let's get into it, and this segment is brought to you by SAS Canola. SAS Canola is excited to announce the launch of its new communication platform, an interactive texting service. Farmers who subscribe can expect to receive a weekly oilseeds market outlook report weekly during the growing season, canola production newsletter, plus event notices and urgent news and alerts. To subscribe, text the keyword SAS Canola, that's SASKCANOLA, to 1-877-241-7044. Keep in mind, by texting SAS Canola, you agree to receive promotional messages from SAS Canola sent via an autodialer. This subscription is not a condition of any service. It's estimated you'll receive about 10 messages per month. Message and data rates may apply. Simply reply STOP to unsubscribe or HELP for help. Terms and privacy policy can be found at saskanola.com/privacy-policy. All right, we go now to my conversation with Corey Jacob. He's the acting provincial weed specialist for the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, so let's talk. Huge concern, of course, for some areas of the province and parts of Alberta as well. This isn't new, but it's definitely worth mentioning again, the risk of herbicide carryover to these pulse crops. What can you tell me about the areas most impacted by that for 2024?
So I want to start by saying we have the herbicide carryover risk maps for 2024. They're just in the approval process. They will be posted very shortly on the ministry website. I guess this isn't anything new. Some areas of West Central Saskatchewan have been in a drought since 2017. So if you start looking ahead to 2024, that's a long time. So there is a very high risk for herbicide carryover. I would say If you're talking West Central Saskatchewan, Southwest Saskatchewan, South Central, those areas that have been continually dry, it again is a high risk for potential carryover in 2024. Really, it's based on your rainfall amount, and when you're not getting enough rain, coupled with, soil moisture is one of the main factors that you require for herbicide breakdown for microbial activity. So it doesn't look good. So caution, caution, caution for producers.
So for pulse growers, again, this isn't necessarily a new risk. This is something that many of them are sort of cognizant of year over year, but it's also one that, can still cause an issue because we don't necessarily have a decent way to test for herbicide carryover. So what can we test for it at all?
So and you're right, it's not an exact science. So a couple of things you could do. There are lab samples you could send away. I mean, I think they're a couple $100 to a lab. I don't have a lab off the top of my head that would test. The issue is if that lab comes back and says you have 300 ppm of this active ingredient, nobody can say, okay, is that enough to cause damage or not to the crop? So the number doesn't mean much. Mm-hmm. So that becomes an issue that it's really not worth it. If the soil isn't frozen, we do say, you could do a field bioassay.
Right.
So that's basically going out to the field, digging up the top 2-3 inches of soil, because that's where your herbicide is going to be concentrated, and really bringing it inside and trying to grow the crop in there.
And that could give you a decent idea, but as you pointed out, and this is, I guess, one of the key things, is that it's hard to know what level is going to cause damage, and when you get the rainfall, let's say in the spring, fingers crossed we get it,
yeah,
if that does release that herbicide. So if soil testing isn't an easy option and growing crop out might be another option, but what other things should farmers be looking at or considering when they're doing their field selection for 2024?
The big thing is record keeping, rainfall. Because the rainfall events are so isolated, you can't just keep a record for the farm and the main yard when you've got land in a 20-mile radius. You need to have, rainfall records for individual quarters or small blocks of land. That's important because herbicide carryover and breakdown is based on the rainfall amount. So that's a big one. And then record keeping, knowing what products have been sprayed on that field. And we're talking back, 2020, 2021, 2022, because with the extended dry period, you could have a herbicide surprise you from 2 years ago that just didn't break down.
Yeah, it's Corey. That is a really good point. Is that, often we look at the cropping restriction, let's say it's a year or it's 2 years, but if you didn't get accumulated rainfall, we could be looking at 2 or 3 years of a recropping, even though the label says it would be safe. It's really dependent on that rainfall.
Very, very dependent on it. And, the word here is just conservative and caution, especially if you're farming in that area of the province that has been in a long-term drought. You're very limited. I can sympathize with producers, but the drought will break. We just don't know when. So hopefully this is the last year of it, and we can just get by and manage, with being very cautious for 2024.
Now, just lastly, of course, we do get excited when there's any form of precipitation in these areas, snowfall included, but snowfall doesn't necessarily count in this calculation.
No, so for herbicide breakdown, it's your precipitation in the growing season. So June, July, and August. That's the big one, and that's because your soil is also warm enough to have the microbial activity and of course the accompanying moisture. Snowfall, it just doesn't do it. We need in season moisture, and also the soil needs to be if the soil's frozen, we don't have the microbial activity. Right. We need to be probably 10 degrees Celsius for soil temperature and higher is when we start to really get good microbial activity. So again, June, July, August, that might extend a little bit here and there, but basically those are your opportunities for breakdown.
All right, great job there, Corey. This is probably the first time I've had a chance to talk to him. He's new in the role. I think he did absolutely great. So reach out to Corey Jacob if you've got any of those questions on weed control in the province. We're going to hop to a quick break, and we'll be back with more RealAg on the weekend here on CKOM 650 and CJME 980 right after this.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup, weed control, field trial results, yield strategies, and so much more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF, Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from realagriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest podcast today.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Welcome back to RealAg on the Weekend. I am your host, Lindsay Smith, here on CKOM 650 and CJME 980. Well, if you were on social media at all this week, you would have easily seen, of course, that there was a gigantic equipment and technology show happening in Hanover, Germany. It's the first time in 4 years that Agritechnica has happened, and we had a whole team from Real Agriculture there on the ground. And of course, it's always hilarious how you can go halfway around the world and still end up finding a whole bunch of friends. And so, if you want to, head on over to YouTube. Our YouTube channel has so many videos on it, but you can also hear and see so much of our coverage at realagriculture.com. But I've pulled now a discussion that Sean Haney, your regular host, and Mr. Tom Wolf of Agrometrics, based in Saskatoon, a discussion that they had about sprayer technology, where it has or hasn't gone in the past 4 years between the two shows.
Sean Haney here with Real Agriculture. We're at Agritechnica 2023 in Hanover, Germany, brought to you by Optimum Gly, a new canola trait technology from Corteva Agriscience. And look who we found. An old friend. It is Tom Wolf, Sprayers 101 and Agrometrics. Tom, you enjoying Agritechnica?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a blast, really. It's always fun to be here.
Yeah, this is like Christmas for you. Getting to walk around, see all the different sprayer manufacturers. Of course, we've got Horsch behind us. They've been getting a lot of attention with the leaf sprayer. Talking to all the different nozzle companies. What are some of the things that have stuck out to you from this year's Agritechnica?
The year-to-year change isn't really that big. We got to be looking at the long-term trends here. And the long-term trends are that the Europeans are really having a close look at pulse width modulation. They are building larger sprayers that are suitable for Canada, and they're looking at the export market to Canada, I guess. We're looking at, still a very heavy emphasis on government regulations, really driving innovation, saying you can do this, but you can't do that, and sprayers are built accordingly. So that's kind of what the key difference is, but I don't see a groundbreaking new sprayer here.
Yeah, it does. You mentioned the size. You do notice that. You'll walk up to a very large sprayer. Yesterday we were at, I can't remember, it's a French company, Bertude? Yeah. They don't export to North America. Star was another one. Huge sprayer. Don't export to North America. And they're Brazilian. But they got these massive sprayers. There is a lot of potential for other manufacturers that we're not even familiar with in North America to maybe enter the market.
It's a really interesting situation. Germany has been subsidizing sprayers that meet their standards to some high degree for the last several years, and it's really supported the manufacturing sector here to build these larger and more, environmentally sound sprayers with, all kinds of closed transfer systems and recirculating booms and that kind of thing. Those subsidies are going to end. They're coming to an end, for Germany at least, in 2024, which means that capacity that has been built to support that sales volume may need to go elsewhere. So we're thinking maybe we'll see even more of these. In fact, I spoke to Kveneland, a Dutch sprayer manufacturer, known for their plows actually, yeah. But they also make 2,000 sprayers a year, and they are looking at coming to Canada.
New competition, and competition's good. It actually spurs innovation.
Absolutely. I think that's really what's been missing. We have a lot of brand loyalty in North America, but it's not necessarily driven by innovation. So I think we can benefit from that as a whole, and hopefully prices will also come down a little bit.
What about on the tech side? Seek and spray, see and spray, however you want to put that. There's a lot of booths that say, well, we have a camera and spot spraying, and there's a lot of that. It's hard for me. It's hard to sort of get through some of the noise and try to figure out who's real and who's kind of not. What stood to you in that area?
Yeah, it's become commoditized in the last 4 years, really. Last time I was here in 2019, I found 7 artificial intelligence people that were working with sprayers, and some of them were undercover. They weren't even exhibiting. And now everybody's got AI of some sort or other. I went to one of the faraway pavilions where they have universities, and they have university exhibitions of students and so forth. Well, everybody's doing AI, absolutely everybody. I went to one, they were using a vacuum to suck slugs off lettuce using AI. The sky's the limit for what you can do with this thing. Right. Horsch behind us here is doing AI. They've been doing it for 4 years, and it doesn't seem to be a real big obstacle to overcome. I thought, are you engaging highly expensive specialists here? Are you subbing out the stuff? And they said the algorithms are actually available on the internet. Yeah. So maybe it's training. Training is the expensive part. And there's the other thing, like we're maybe in a euphoric stage of spot spraying. Everybody's got it on their product, but are they actually delivering an accuracy and a reliability and a cost that is actually going to have resonance in the marketplace? We don't even know that yet. So there should be a little bit of skepticism about this whole development.
Yeah. Well, and also regulatory bodies updating labels. That's one of the other barriers, I would imagine, when it comes to that technology.
Absolutely. Look at Germany again. They're known for being really highly regulated, and so they're currently grappling with the issue of how does a spot sprayer drift compared to a broadcast sprayer, and how do we calculate buffer zones for such a sprayer, and how do we calculate all of these environmental impacts when we don't really know what proportion of the field they're treating. We did a little thing with Carl DeConnick-Smith a few weeks ago on The Agronomist, and he said the outside rounds actually are the ones where he uses up the most liquid on his spot sprayer. He has a weeded system in Rosetown, and he says, you may use maybe up to half of your total volume of the field on the 2 outside rounds, and then because the population is there. So how do you assess that for drift risk? You really can't, and so they're grappling with it.
Okay, the other one that stood out to me, we spent some time yesterday with DGI Agriculture looking at drones. There's a number of different Chinese drone manufacturers that are here. Where does that fit into spraying now and in the future?
So I view it from 2 different perspectives. It's been quite useful in Asia, where this pesticide application has been largely handheld at high risk to the operator. They're walking through their fields, and they're walking perhaps on steep slopes, terrace slopes, and those kinds of things. It's hard labor, and the drone has been a real boon to them, being able to automate that and reduce the risk to themselves. So it's been good for them. In North America and Europe and elsewhere in the world, we've been using boom sprayers, and we've really had a relatively safe application environment, and we have had good distribution of the spray quality and so on and so forth. For us, the drone has become a challenge because we can't really achieve the same uniformity and the same capacity and the same, standardized, quality that we've come to expect. So, a step forward for Asia, possibly a step backwards for the rest of us. Yet there's still enthusiasm. I mean, they do have a place. Are they going to be a spot sprayer, so to speak, a niche sprayer? Possibly. Will they be a broadcast sprayer? I think it's too soon to tell.
Yeah, it could be the DJI. I think it was a 40 kilo load on their large drone they debuted here. Maybe that's working in tandem with a larger sprayer. I don't know. It seems like there's stuff to still be worked out.
We'll see. Yeah, for us, it's the quality of the deposition that is the issue for us. We want to have uniformity. That's a fundamental building block. If you have some region of the spray swath that is underdosing by, say, up to 50%, you have coefficients of variation of 50%, which is unacceptable, really, in a boom spray world. But we do see it from time to time in the drone world, and we rarely get better than a CV of, say, 25%. That's really challenging to get better than that. When you're underdosing by, say, 50% in one place in the swath, you have to up your rate to get the control that you've come to expect. and of course that's wasteful. And so, we'll see how that goes. Again, all these technological cycles have a euphoric phase. We're in a lot of those right now.
And with that, we're going to head to a quick break, but I will be back with more Real Ag on the Weekend here on CKOM 650 and CJME 980.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
The next generation is the future of agriculture, but how do we launch from one role to leading? From succession planning and family dynamics to understanding finances and making the tough calls to discovering paths others have taken all through agriculture, the Successors Podcast covers it all. Tune in with me, your host, Kara Oosterhuis, simply by searching The Successors on your favorite podcast platform, or you can find it by visiting www.realagriculture.com.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
Welcome back to Real Ag on the Weekend. I am your host, Lindsay Smith, here on CKOM 650 and CJME 980. Just a quick note, this next segment is a paid spot by Genesis Fertilizers. Joining me now on the line is Barry Mann. He's the Vice President of Investor Relations with Genesis Fertilizers. Welcome here, Barry.
Hello, Lindsay. Great to be here.
All right, so tell me, Barry, what is the Genesis Fertilizer project?
Right. So Genesis is it's a limited partnership with primarily farmer involvement, farmer ownership. And the project was formed, Genesis was formed to build out a Western Canadian fertilizer manufacturing and distribution system. So we're moving directly into the production of primarily urea, and then building out a system of distribution centers across Western Canada for the obviously the storage and blending. But the primary focus is the plant itself, which is to be located at Belle Plaine, Saskatchewan, and with about a 700,000 ton capacity.
Now, you did mention, of course, this important aspect of the farmer participation, the farmer investment is in this. So what are the fundamentals as to why this is an investment that farmers are participating in?
Right. So it's, I think it's been known for some time, in Western Canada, farmers do pay some of the highest fertilizer costs around the world, according to all the different research that's out there. And the reason basically is we're landlocked, right? We're far away from any major port. So when the supply and demand issues, tend to move up and down, it's really the port of NOLA, New Orleans, Louisiana, that sets the price, because that's the import position for North America, and 50% of imports come through there. So it's well known that that's essentially where prices are set. And because Western Canadian farmers are pretty much the furthest away from that port, we pay the highest prices due to the freight component that's built in. So inherently, we've got this market, I don't know if you call it distortion, but it definitely impacts the prices. On the other side of the equation, we're sitting here with essentially unlimited natural gas as a feedstock. So the producers in Western Canada, the fertilizer manufacturers, enjoy quite an advantage where you're able to produce the fertilizer at some of the cheapest costs in the world, but our retail prices, due to the NOLA situation, we pay some of the highest prices. So what that results in is some of the world's greatest margins in the fertilizer industry. And the Genesis model is simply to take that at natural occurrence due to geography and other factors, and allow farmers to participate in that value chain.
Now, so this is, I mean, it's a big project. What's the current status? What does the timeline look like going forward?
Yeah, it is a big project. It's estimated to be currently about $1.7 billion. There's a couple components to it. So you've got the project itself, the physical project, right? You've got the engineering, the design. What exactly is that plant going to look like? Where's it going to go? What are the services required to bring it in? So there's an incredible amount of work required to get the project off the ground, and we recognize that. And it's also a lot of money, right? So we've been working for the last year and a half, I guess, is really when the project said, okay, let's go. It's go time. The Saskatchewan government stepped up with considerable incentives in order to build. So that really allowed the financial aspects of it to be, to be in place to say it's a good time to start. So we began a capital raise. We put in a lot of the, we fleshed out the project dynamics, all the way things were going to work. We started that capital raise about a year and a half. So over that time, we've been raising significant amount of capital directly from the farms. So the way the project is getting done is the plant produces kind of a static amount of fertilizer, right? Like it's the plant produces what it produces, and it's designed to produce at peak capacity. So we've just taken those tons and we're kind of dividing them up by the farmers. So farmers are taking a stake directly in the plant based on the amount of fertilizer they use on their farm. So it's quite a very unique opportunity. So they become totally vertically integrated. So if they're a farmer and they're using, they're a 5,000 acre farmer, they're using 300 tons of fertilizer, they're going to own the equity stake in the plant in the company that represents those tons that they're using. So although Genesis is going to charge market price, Genesis will be a market player just like everybody else, but the ownership is going to be the farmers. And today, when you look at the ownership structure of the major producers in Canada, the major plants that operate, and you look at the ownership structure, it's large hedge funds and it's a lot of international ownership. So this is just a tremendous opportunity for farmers across Western Canada and Eastern Canada. They are participating as well. That where they can take a direct ownership, and those profits, those margins, which are, like I said, are some of the greatest in the industry, they're going to stay on the farm. They're going to come back to the farmer because of their ownership stake. So it really is a unique opportunity that works with urea fertilizer and other nitrogen fertilizers, where because they use it every year and they use about the same amount, they're able to take an investment position that really does reflect their personal use. So they become the owner, but they're also their own customer.
Alrighty. And where then, for farmers who are interested, where could they go for more information?
Just genesisfertilizers.com. We have a lot of information on there, and there's obviously the opportunity to just click a button and allow Genesis to reach out and directly contact them. We're also going to be holding a series of town hall meetings in Manitoba and Saskatchewan the week of the 20th. So those will be listed on our website as well.
A reminder that this has been a paid spot by Genesis Fertilizers. We will be back with more RealAg on the weekend here on CKOM 650 and CJME 980 right after this. Hi, I'm Lindsay Smith of RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern for The Agronomists, Canada's only live, interactive, agronomy-based show. Each week, we answer your most pressing questions with a rotating panel of agronomists, researchers, and extension staff from across Canada. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, or head to realagriculture.com/live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The The Soybean School is brought to you by Pride Seeds, BASF, and Syngenta Canada.
Welcome back to RealAg on the weekend here on CKOM 650 and CJME 980. I am your host, Lindsay Smith. Your regular host, Sean Haney, will be back in the driver's seat next week. But for now, it's my show. This segment is brought to you by Farmer's Edge. Elevate your farm's soil health and profitability with Farmer's Edge. Our advanced fertility services leverage cutting-edge technology for precise soil analysis and dynamic input applications with variable rate services. Visit farmersedge.ca/farmers today. All right, there is plenty of news to tackle this week. We've got some announcements that came out. There's some news stories as well. And then I'm going to end off with where we're at with Bill C-234 because there are demonstrations planned for next week. So we'll get you all up to date on that. But first off, on the canola front, we did see Federal Agriculture Minister Lawrence MacAulay was south of Winnipeg earlier this week and announced $9 million for canola research. And that $9 million is under the SCAP program, so that's the Sustainable Canadian Agricultural Partnership, so that's the federal provincial shared funding model. So that $9 million, there's a few things to say about it. I'll start with the good. The good is those dollars are then going to be leveraged and added to by the four provincial groups, of course, that represent canola, a wee bit from Ontario, but Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta are also going to put in money and leverage that $9 million into $17 million, and that's over 5 years for research projects for canola. So just a note, I mean, $9 million is a lot. The $17 million is a lot, but there was some discussion this week about the fact that this is the third announcement where the dollars for canola, so in 2013, so 10 years ago, under Growing Forward 2, the envelope of money for canola was $15 million in 2013. If we wanted to look at the equivalent, so Francois Tardif out of the University of Guelph did a little back-of-the-napkin math, made a handy little graph, and said that if we wanted to see equivalent dollars today, this announcement should have been closer to 19 and change. That's 19 million and change. So we're definitely seeing a downward trend. The announcement in between, just for your knowledge, was 12 million. So it went 15, 12, 9. What does it mean? I guess we'll find out. But there certainly is a downward trend, and that definitely got the attention of some people this week and got them talking. We also saw this week, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada launched a agriculture methane reduction challenge. So this is a $12 million envelope of money. Note, more than the $9 million going to canola. $12 million envelope of money that is going to be handed out through several phases of development. It's a challenge, so there's going to be different organizations that are going to put forward technology and processes that decrease agriculture methane emissions. We're talking dairy and beef cows here. And so that will go through several different iterations until they get to a final winner who gets more money. So that challenge was launched this week. And then we also saw in Manitoba, there was over $9 million announced for a Living Labs project. So a busy week on the handing out money from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. We also saw this week, of course, Agritechnica was happening, so there was a lot of new equipment and big announcements. But we also saw, and Kelvin Hepner has been following this story, that Buehler, so the makers of Versatile tractors, has publicly but kind of quietly been looking for, and it's not entirely clear, either a majority stake owner or a minority stake owner. And this all comes down to the fact that Buehler does have, of course, Russian interests that own part of this company. And so they have been looking for potentially another owner or a part owner. And so there was some news this week that Buehler had hired a company to find potentially these investors. So the Versatile brand, as I mentioned, so those tractors made out of Manitoba, but also the Farm King brand owned by Buehler. And so looking for someone potentially to buy in, but again, they're not saying whether it is a majority or minority stake. Right now, over 96% of the company is owned by Rosselmash, which is a Russian company. All right, on to Bill C-234, and I gotta tell you, there is a lot happening on this file, and I'm going to try and summarize it as best I can. But as we heard last week, there was I brought some news that there had been some forward momentum on this bill. This is the one that exempts natural gas, propane from the carbon tax if it's being used for grain drying or for barn heating. Bill C-234 would grant that exemption. There is a sunset clause, meaning it's only for a portion of time. That was up for debate in the Senate as well. However, the Senate last week, at the very end of the week, went against protocol and actually shut down discussion of the bill when really it should have had debate and then went to third reading and went to a vote, which is a critical step to receiving royal assent and actually becoming law. It was, and I'm sure you've seen by now some of the discussion on what in the heck is happening with the Senate, but behind the scenes, we certainly know that there is a lot of government pressure, and this is a lot of politicking happening in the Senate. The Liberals don't want this carbon exemption to happen, even though it's the same government that just exempted heating oil in the Atlantic provinces from the carbon tax for a certain amount of time. The Liberals certainly do not want this to happen, and they have been pushing behind the scenes and been calling senators, some MPs have been calling senators and trying to pressure them to drag out this bill. And if you're curious, Kelvin Hepner has written a really great article on RealAgriculture.com that lays out how the Senate could potentially drag their feet for an incredibly long time, long enough potentially for this bill to actually never become law and actually die on the order paper, which this is a bill that has had cross-party support. This is the will of Parliament to move this bill forward, and it is not the Senate's place to stop a bill that is in the will of Parliament, which the Parliament is made up of elected officials. This is what our elected officials want to push forward. The Senate, of course, is appointed, and this isn't really how it's supposed to work. So that has caused a lot of friction. There's a lot of producer groups that are pushing farmers and pushing individuals to contact their MPs, contact the senators, and tell them that this is unacceptable and that we need to see Bill C-234 passed. We have learned, and there is no affiliation with any political party or producer group, but we do know that behind the scenes, there are people who are mobilizing who want to put on a demonstration in support of Bill C-234. Now, the senators are supposed to be back sitting on Tuesday, so that's November 21st, and so there are demonstrations planned for Ottawa. There will not be any tractors or vehicles allowed. That's actually in line with, well, fallout from the Freedom Convoy that happened in Ottawa, but also because of some rules put on some pro-Palestinian protests that have been happening, and so there will be no vehicles allowed, but people are being encouraged to head to Ottawa on Tuesday. There's also plans at different MPs' offices as well that we've heard about. And so this is definitely something that we're keeping an eye on. Next week will be a very big week. We definitely are seeing from the political perspective anyway, the Conservatives are really ramping up the pressure. John Barlow, who of course is the ag critic, he's an MP from Alberta, he's really leading the charge on this and really pushing that the Liberals get out of the way and the senators get out of the way and let this bill move forward. It is the will of Parliament. It is what the elected officials have passed and have said that they want. And so we will see where that goes, and we'll see what those demonstrations might look like next week. All right. That just about does it for me here on the show. Thank you so much for listening. It's been absolutely a joy to be here with you today. I hope you found the show entertaining, informative. If you've got any feedback, we love feedback on the show. You can email me, lsmith@realagriculture.com, or you can send us a voicemail on the RealAg feedback line. That's 1-855-776-6147. And of course, you can find us across social media at Real Agriculture. And yes, subscribe to that YouTube channel. Catch all our videos there. All right. Thank you all for listening. On behalf of CKOM 650 and CJME 980, this has been RealAg on the Weekend. I'm Lindsay Smith. Have a great weekend, everyone. Cheers.